You aren't live, by the way.
We're live now?
Yeah, it is 4 o'clock, so.
Thank you.
Let's talk to him. So it's not gonna get-
Oh, okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City Operations Committee to order. The record reflect the starting time of probably about 4:01 now. We just got word from our chairperson that he will not be able to make it. All the committee members are present. Takes us to the meeting minutes from July 17th. Councilman Cos.
I would move the minutes of July 17th, 2024 as written.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That takes us to public comment, and I noticed that we don't have anybody from the public outside of our respective agenda items. So what we're going to do is actually get started with our discussion action item. Action items, because we have two. We're going to start with bringing up Ms. Kimberly Whitfield to the table, so you can come right up and join us. And this is a resolution under consideration for an reappointment as the fourth board member of the Park Board for a term to expire June 30th, 2028. How are you? Good. I'm glad you could be with us. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of, typically for reappointments, we don't bring the candidate. Okay. There was a little bit of concern over attendance over the last year. And I think there was some concern amongst committee members in terms of moving forward. Would you be able to remedy that as whatever was causing that kind of subsided? So you want to talk just a little bit. We know you're highly qualified. We know that historically you've done a great job. I think just again, so that we can address when we go out before council, any concerns regarding attendance. You want to talk about that maybe briefly?
Well, sure.
Okay.
I was in contact, Brett and his admin team, but just needed some time off. And I feel like in life, when that happens, the best thing to do is to step away, and your mental health is your wealth. And so that's pretty much for the most part what happened.
You're back in the saddle and fired up for another term.
I am, yes, and I'm delighted to serve. I have lived in this community for 55 years, and I feel like I can do a lot, and I have in the past. And it's a rewarding experience to work with the board and the board members. And what's been exciting too with attending the most recent meeting in July was to see a lot of good things that happen and to see it from fresh eyes. And so I really do think that the time off was really good, and to step away. Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Councilman Cos, you have any questions? Comments?
Do you go by Kim or Kimberly?
Kimberly.
Okay. I appreciate taking time off for mental health. I get that totally. My concern still stands. You missed 9 meetings in a row, and there's another member that has not been to meetings in some time. And the Parks Board is a very important board. A lot of things are decided there, and moving forward, I know that you've been to the last 2 meetings up to this reappointment. Do you see another absence happening? I want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And if you're struggling, perhaps it would be time to step down from this board for some time and maybe revisit serving the community at a later date.
Well, I think that's a very good question. I'm going to be very wholeheartedly honest with you. There were some things happening that just didn't appear to be right. And they date back to the pandemic times. For at one point, they were wanting another person of color on the board because of what was going on in the community. There was an email that was put out. It wasn't actually put out, but it was supposed to go to council, and myself and another board member said, you know, we're going to opt out from signing this. And it had to do with the riots in Lansing. They were wanting to do things like defund the police. And it just appeared that these things that were going on, you know, they weren't really part of what our role was. And the board member or the president at the time, she apologized because she said, I really feel like, you know, we shouldn't have said this whole thing about having another person on the board, person of color, things like that. And, you know, some of those things were even disheartening, you know. Another thing was, you know, wanting to have our parks open all night. So all those things were kind of weighing on me. And I love Lansing. As I mentioned before, I'm 55 years old. I've lived here all my life. I know a lot about Lansing. But these things were really making me feel uneasy. And I really had to step back and say, but I really want to be a part of this. So to answer your question, I didn't want to ruffle the feathers, but I had to really think about it. And that's why coming back, even when I saw you at the meeting in June and the compliments that you made to the board, I could kind of see that things were taking a turn. And a lot of those little things that were kind of, I think, there was also sometimes rudeness to admin. You know, it was like we were just trying to do too many things. So I'm being honest with you. And I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to speak. I didn't really want to get into that, but those things were really weighing on me. I'm an upbeat person. I'm positive, and I just don't like foolishness.
Kimberly, if the question of parks hours came up again, what would happen? I mean, you know, you listed that as one of the reasons. I'm not saying it would, but it potentially could be an issue.
Well, you know what? When you talk about hours, if there's something planned that's going on, that's totally different. But with the gun violence, if we're just having young people in the park, I was looking at a video recently again of what happened at Morris Park, like a shootout. You know? So safety is, all lives matter, blue lives, everybody matters. And we don't even have enough LPD boots on the ground. So I'm open to ideas with parks being open, but I think there's got to be a positive agenda and everybody's got to be on board.
I think, and I could be totally wrong, and so correct me if I'm wrong, I think the spirit of the question is, if things get contentious again, right? Because you guys are decision makers and things of that nature. If things get contentious again, and the temperature of the room elevates again, do you feel like, you know what, I'm ready to take that on this time? Because inevitably, right, there's going to be tough conversations, particularly around parks and amenities within people's neighborhoods, and people are incredibly passionate. One of the things I appreciate about you is that you do represent an alternate viewpoint. But it's critical as a representative for you to be in that room advocating, as opposed to stepping aside and saying, you know what, that room is just not healthy for me in this time. And if it's not going to be, fine, as Ryan said, maybe step aside in perpetuity. But I think, you know, for me personally, I think you have a lot of value. I think you have value to that board. I just want to make sure that this time around you really want to be in there and get after it.
Absolutely, and I'm all in. I just think it's kind of one of those situations where you look at a situation and you sometimes have to step back because it's not all about your opinion or how you feel. You have to look through clear eyes. And so taking that time to do so and seeing the rewarding things that the board has done, I think I'm really proud of myself because a lot of people feel like they got to just take charge. It's my idea. This is this and this is, you know, and I'm not that kind of person, but you have to put some logic into it and be fair and be open to other ideas. And so that, along with things that were going on, it was a lot. But I really feel like I am a positive attribute to the board, and I can do a good job. I know that.
And so I'm sorry if the spirit was not that. I apologize. I just, do you have any other?
I think to clarify that Morris Park, there was no shooting there. It was, about 4 blocks away that happened.
But you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
And so I'm curious then, on other contentious issues. I was there when 35 people came for Bancroft. And if I recall, you had gotten very upset at one point during that meeting. There is a lot of pressure in that group. A lot of people have very deep emotions when you're talking about their parks and their community. I don't want you to end up in a situation again where you have to take time off because it's pushed you to that point, and you don't feel like you can go to those meetings. So I guess I'm asking, what is going to be different moving forward for the next 4 years?
I wish you knew me better. I haven't really had a chance to speak with you. When I see you, usually there's not a lot of words. But I'm a good person. And I don't know, in that meeting, in the Bancroft meeting, I was proud of myself because I did advocate. And there were a lot of rude words that were shared with Brett. There was a neighbor who started yelling, and I'm assertive, and I spoke up. And I didn't swarm out of that meeting, but I did notice that people oftentimes want to ruffle feathers in a meeting to see if they can kind of stir things up. And I was really proud of a lot of what came out of the Bancroft meeting, because some people were upset, but we were able to talk collectively as a board. And I do remember that evening, you being at that meeting. But like I said, I think with my personality, I'm not a person that's aggressive or loud. But like I mentioned to you before, you have my word. And, if there's other questions you want to ask, I'm willing to answer them. But the moral of the story here is I had to step back. I really did. And once again, I can say that I'm proud of myself for that. That took a lot. But I was still in contact with the board through admin. So yes.
Can I ask a question? Because, every one of our votes is equal to one another. So I do have a couple things, actually just one, that, I think I'll have to consider. So you said that we have your word. I guess what I'm hoping is that should you find yourself in a position again where your mind and your heart aren't necessarily in concert with this board, that you say, maybe it's time for me to step down and let the administration know, so that there can be another appointment. The only reason I say that, Kim, is that the work that these boards do, I think it's incredibly important.
Absolutely.
But the other piece is if you have absent members, that puts pressure on the other members in terms of their attendance, their commitment to the board, whether or not you guys have quorums, whether or not things can move forward, whether or not conversations can happen out in the community that need to happen. And so it's really important, I think, that we have active participation. And of course, there's things that happen outside of the meetings, but the meetings are a huge part of that. And then secondly, when people, frankly, I was on the park board for 5 years, and we had a few members that had missed 9-10 meetings in a row. And for the first time ever, at least under Brett's direction, we had to actually invoke some provisions within our bylaws that allowed us to remove those members because we were struggling to achieve quorum and move things like master plans and things like that forward. So I would just ask that if that happens again, right, and this is for my consideration, I'm hoping I have your word that you'll say, what, it's time for me to step aside as opposed to taking 9-10 meetings off. Does that make
I
sense?
believe it was that, Nitty. But
Okay.
the other thing, I'm glad you brought this up because I did email Brett about taking the time off, and I did actually think about it before I even fill out the paperwork, because why waste anyone's time?
Right.
Like this meeting right now.
Right.
So I did do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
That matters to me. Mr. Cost, anything else?
No.
We have a motion.
Yes, I would make a motion for the resolution of reappointment of Kimberly Whitfield as the fourth ward member of the Parks Board.
All right, there's a motion on the floor for the discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, so here's what happens. This goes out before council. We don't do swearing in for reappointments, so there's no need for you to be there. But we will take this up on the 12th, right? And so you should have word from our office thereafter. All right, I appreciate you being here, truly, and being candid, yeah, and allowing us to be candid. We appreciate that. All right,
Thank you very
thanks so much. All right, Mitch, we are on item C, resolution. We have 2 traffic control orders for Westchester Road and East Westchester Road. And these deal with prohibitions from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. in terms of on-street parking. You got it.
We received a request from a resident in the Cambridge Downs subdivision. The request was made to prohibit the parking from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. for the entire subdivision. With that request, they were informed they needed to do a petition, send back a petition per the ordinance. This petition had, I believe it was 62% support for the entire neighborhood, which was enough for us to be able to conduct the study. In a review of the study, we looked at the actual petitions, the signatures, the addresses, block by block. It was noted that there wasn't a real high level of support for what I call the ring of the neighborhood. However, East Westchester and Westchester had a significant level of support for those 2 streets. Further investigation, geometrics. There's not a lot of significant geometric issues out on any of those streets that would be of a concern with parking either being prohibited or permitted. Same thing with police and fire, with consultation with them. They did not see any issues with the current unrestricted parking the way it is. We did traffic counts. The evening traffic counts are very low, if any, which is expected at that time. So that wouldn't be an issue with on-street parking on both sides of the street. So purely traffic safety wise, we do not see an issue with the parking as it is right now. However, there is a significant support on East Westchester and Westchester to prohibit the parking. So we are in the opinion that, based on the support, we would support that option of just prohibiting it on East Westchester and Westchester. Public Service Board supported that report, and we're forwarding it on with their support for prohibition on East Westchester and Westchester alone.
All right, thank you. Councilman Cost.
So first paragraph on recommendation says would not recommend based on safety.
Yeah.
But would recommend reinstatement as the people asked for it.
Yeah, the high level of support, yes.
So this is what I would say. So when I saw this come through, the Public Service Board, I went out late at night through that whole neighborhood, from Moores River Estate all the way through. I found maybe 5 cars parked in the road in intersections. I believe some of it was site issues, but the intersections were massive. You could put a house in the middle of it and you'd still have space. I went out during the day, the same 5 cars. This was 3 weeks later. It seems to be just specific cars. We have on-street parking problems over in my area. I wish that brand new Cadillac was the worst thing in our street, but it's not. I am in the belief that making rules that I can't see as enforceable, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. when we have 9 cops on the beat. We got all kinds of stuff going on in the city, and they're going to run over there to ticket a car parking from 2 to 5 seems a little ridiculous, especially with, what you said, the low I've never passed a car in that neighborhood. So I would be in strong favor of rejecting this resolution.
Yeah, and I'm conflicted. I wish that we could come up with something that works citywide.
Yeah.
Because this is something that we continue to hear a lot about. And so I don't love this idea of, these patches of prohibition throughout the city. But the other piece is, I do want my neighborhoods to have some measure of control as well. So I want to, if there's something that is specific to, as an example, Churchill Downs, I really want them to be able, some channel for them to navigate to take care of an issue that is very hyper local for them. So I kind of wavered back and forth too. I'm going to support this, but I don't think that this isn't something that has to go up before they get denied committee, correct? TCOs, I would assume they can.
I'm sorry.
I said I would assume traffic control orders can die. I've never seen one die in committee, but I'm sure they can. This isn't something we have to vote out for full consideration, is it?
If you don't forward it on, it in essence dies.
Yeah, Mitch, the reason I asked the question of law is that, as an example, anything that is land use consideration has to go out, regardless of committee input. So,
Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure. I can check into that and get back to you. I don't have an answer for you.
okay, we
This
can
one.
still vote on it, assuming it dies in committee, and then if we are wrong, then we'll have to consider. Okay.
And this is maybe a question you could answer. Is there anywhere in the city right now that has a prohibition like this?
For the 2 to 5?
Yeah.
No, this would be
Okay.
the first one. And I think, and I don't know if the board had sent it to you, they were writing their own,
Gotcha.
with regard to 2 to 5 request, and I don't know if that's been moved forward.
I don't believe we've gotten anything.
No,
yet.
yeah.
I would say this, I do agree with Councilman Hussein or Vice President Hussein on the idea that we want our neighborhoods to be self-controlling. I think the issue is we've, kind of let the genie out of the bottle on this parking thing. And it's gotten to the point where we've got trailers and, cars with no
Oh,
wheels and my concern is that we can't enforce this, or police aren't going to enforce it, and then we're opening another issue. Whereas I think we really need to address the parking issue as a city as a whole. And we've, tried to do that, and we're still working through that with OCA and public
Right.
safety. And it's definitely a can of worms. I don't see LPD coming out, and then I see that being a problem that LPD didn't respond about these cars. Plus, I've driven through the neighborhood, and at this time, I do not see a problem with the on-street parking that's happening. I was not blind on any corner. I was on a motorcycle, actually, one of the times. A great sight, much better than the neighborhoods, streets I drove in your ward, where I felt, a little bit reckless because sometimes I couldn't see very well because there's cars everywhere on some streets. So I would support something like this, where it's really needed and where we can actually enforce, but I just don't think we're in that place.
No, I'm not trying to convince you.
No,
I guess for me, it's just, the only reason why I said that, I was conflicted and kind of leaning towards supporting it is that, I was here when we repealed the 2 to 5. And frankly, that was an effort because it was a very vocal minority within the city. They were upset with it. And so we had a council member, just ramrod it through. And unfortunately, that left neighborhoods all across the city saying, well, so what do we do now? So what I'm seeing is the neighborhood, whether we see it as an issue or not, they live there. And a neighborhood is trying, in spite of council, because we're not doing anything, right? There's some measure of inaction on our part. They're trying to solve the problem. And it's a legal channel they're navigating. And for that reason, I'm supportive of it, even though I think we should be looking at a systemic answer for the entire city. But I'm not trying to convince you.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to not support it, not because of where it's at or any of those other factors. I think personally driving through there so many times, just not seeing an issue present where I see other neighborhoods that really should be asking for this.
Yep.
I don't want to, again, make a rule that doesn't end up getting enforced and it's 5 cars. I mean, literally 5 cars.
And the only two things real quick, I think one of the things, even when we had a 2 to 5, it was complaint based. But at least we had something on the books. If enough complaints came in, we could get out there. And sometimes enforcement's through education. And so sometimes it wasn't even we would get out there and tickets. Sometimes we would get out there and flyer the neighborhood. Did you know? That type of thing. That's the first piece. The second piece is that the other concern I would have is that we're setting a precedent. And so if we deny them, and really it's kind of what I drove through and I saw 5 cars as opposed to something really scientific. So if as I would assume you're talking about Wadsworth and Bernard and those streets. If they came, they have a very real need, right, to have some type of traffic calming over there. Would we be arbitrary in our decision if we said, sure, we'll do it this time around?
And I get that.
You know what
I
I mean?
think, I think
Yeah.
that, what this report tells us is scientifically, it's not recommended with the study.
Okay.
But because 62% of the people complaint driven, they recommend it. So we're getting we're getting conflicting reports.
So that's a good point. That's a good point. So if you had a recommendation from public service saying
With
this is
scientific
needed-
evidence, yes.
Okay.
I would,
No, I
I
think
would,
it's-
yeah,
think
I would have no issue immediately if we had that.
Okay.
Um, but based on, their data and what they collected, it's not recommended.
All right, I think that's fair. So if this was to die, what's the communication with the neighbor look like, the petitioner?
I've got their contact
Okay.
information, so I can easily let them know.
So,
I would make a, motion on this resolution to, deny the traffic control order number 24.
Alright. Perfect. There's a motion on the floor for the discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, aye. All right, motion carries, fails. I don't know. The resolution doesn't proceed.
Yeah.
All right. With that, do you have any other
I
discussion?
have nothing, sir.
All right, Mitch, you got anything? Lisa, you got
Do you have
anything?
anything for me?
All right, we are adjourned. Perfect.
Thank you.
I'll get you an email.